They're the hosts of the Duran, a popular geopolitical news channel. Joining us from London, we have Alexander Mercouris, and from Athens, Greece, his co-host, Alex Christoforou. Oh, God, I hope I said it right. Alexander and Alex, welcome to the show.
We're delighted to be here.
All right. Thank you,
Jimmy. Glad to be here.
All right. Did I mangle your last names?
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. So now you guys know everything about everything happening over there. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about at least this one story. Russia will not export oil subject to Western price cap, Deputy Prime Minister says. So Russia, the world's second largest oil exporter, is not going to sell oil that is subject to a Western price cap, even if it has to cut production, President Vladimir said. Putin's point man said. The Group of Seven and Australia on Friday agreed a $60 a barrel price cap on Russian seaborne crude oil after European Union members overcame resistance from Poland. The move by the West to prohibit shipping, insurance, and reinsurance companies from handling cargoes of Russian crude above the cap is an attempt to punish Putin for the Ukraine conflict. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said on Sunday the move by the West was a gross interference which contradicted the rules of free trade and would destabilize global energy markets by triggering a shortage of supply. We are working on mechanisms to prohibit the use of a price cap instrument, regardless of what level is set, because such interference could further destabilize the market, said Novak, who is the Russian governmental official in charge of the country's oil, gas, blah, blah. We will sell oil and petroleum products only to those countries that will work with us under market conditions, even if we have to reduce production a little. Novak said the Western cap could trigger trouble in the products markets and could affect other countries besides Russia. So the EU, here's Ursula von der Leyen. She says the EU agreement on an oil price cap, coordinated with G7 and others, will reduce Russia's revenues significantly. It will help us stabilize global energy prices, benefiting emerging economies around the world. Now, my guess is none of that is true. That the exact opposite is probably that's going to hurt emerging economies around the world, and it's not going to stabilize global. And that's my guess. Let me bring in my two guests here to tell me what do you make of this, and is my guess right?
Well, Jimmy, you're absolutely right. Now, the Russians are going to oppose this because what this is an attempt by the G7, in other words, the Western countries, the United States and its friends, to decide what the price of Russian oil globally is going to be. They're in the position at the moment when they say they're not buying Russian oil, but they want everybody else to buy Russian oil at a certain price. Now, no producer of any product is going to let a consumer cartel dictate the price of their product in that kind of way. Now, the Russians are in a position to blow this up. They can cut production. There's been suggestions that they could cut production by up to 3 million barrels a day. That would send the price of oil skyrocketing. If they did that, they can do it without apparently affecting their own production systems. And of course, if oil production prices they cut production in that way, and oil prices rose, well, they'd actually make up more money. I don't think myself that they're going to do that. But they're sending out a warning. They're saying to everybody, look, if you go along with this price cap idea that the Americans are trying to impose on us, firstly, the Americans will try to do the same to any product you're selling. Why wouldn't they? They'd say Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, we're going to impose price caps on your oil. They can say the same about metals, grain, anything. So it's not in your interest. And besides, if you want to buy oil from us, and if you're an emerging economy, then you've got to negotiate with us about oil, and you mustn't pay any attention to this oil price cap idea. And just a few minutes ago, I saw a report that in the Far Eastern markets, Russian oil is now selling at $79 a barrel. In other words, significantly above the price cap.
So, again, I'm a self-described dumb guy, C student, and it seems like everything. How could this possibly work? Could this possibly work? This price cap idea?
Well, it could in theory if everybody were to agree to it. I mean, if China, India, Turkey, Brazil, everybody as well as the West signed up to it. But they're not going to. Why would they? As I said, ultimately, it's something which could be directed at them. So, of course, they're not going to. Nobody is going to give the United States a position where they can dictate other people's prices. I mean, Novak talks, a lot about free markets, interference in free markets and all that sort of thing. What he's basically saying is, well, the United States wants to dictate everybody's prices to suit itself. And this is a threat to all of us. And we're none of us going to go along with it, are we? And they're all saying, absolutely, none of us will. The Europeans will, the Americans will, the Japanese and a few other countries will. But the rest of the world won't, because it's a threat basically to every emerging economy around the world, everybody who wants to sell goods for the highest price they can on the international markets.
So now this gentleman here says, how is the oil price cap enforced? By blackmailing insurance and shipping companies to block oil. Russia anticipated this move. They simply bought 100 tankers and insured them in Shanghai. Russia's strategic planning is always one step ahead of Europe. Why?
Well, here you see, this is where again I have to say we're all a bit behind the times, because once upon a time, 20, 30, 40 years ago, pretty much all insurance for ships was done in London. The British had the expertise, they had the legal system, they had Lloyd's of London. That isn't the way the world works now. You have insurance systems in Shanghai, you have insurance systems in India, you have insurance systems in Russia itself. And of course, the Russians can buy tankers. So, no problems about Western shipping companies not wanting to deal with their oil. So insurance isn't a problem. Shipping isn't a problem. They can supply oil to whomever they like. They can get insurance from China. They can provide insurance themselves. It's not a problem anymore.
Jimmy, it's like the EU, the United States, and the entire West. It's like they have this image and they believe that Russia is going to sit there and say, we've got all this oil. Where are we going to sell it to now? What are we going to do now? What do we do with all this oil? My God. So
Europe's going to end up paying a higher price for the oil, right? This is a clown show. I mean, so everything the United States, so me sitting here as a C student, everything the United States under Joe Biden has done in response to Ukraine and Russia has done everything to hurt the people of Ukraine, hurt the people of Europe, and hurt the people of the United States, and do almost nothing to Russia. Russia's economy is doing well. Their dollar is doing well. And now they're making strategic relationships with Saudi Arabia and China and the rest of the world, right? There's BRICS is happening. Tell people what BRICS is.
Well, I mean, if I can say, the BRICS is a loose association of countries. It actually started when, I think it was an American economist said that there were certain important emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China. So that was the BRIC group. And they said, well, this economist has said this about us, so let's all get together and we can all discuss how well we're doing and plan together various things. And of course, what's gradually happened is that this very loose, informal grouping of countries has gradually crystallized. And as they see the Western powers trying to exert economic influence on them, they've just developed their sort of working parties. They've become much more formal. They talk together. They're attracting new members. South Africa has joined. Saudi Arabia is looking to join. Iran is looking to join. All of these other countries. And of course, they're now setting themselves up as a rival to the G7, to the Western economies. And of course, the most dangerous thing that they can do at the moment, and they're like talking about doing, is that they're talking about setting up an alternative currency, reserve currency to the dollar. There's supposed to be a plan being worked out to do that.
So that it's over then when that happens, right? For the United States.
Well, absolutely. I mean, bear in mind something. I said, for example, that with this oil price cap idea, no oil producer is going to be happy. The biggest oil producer, or at least the biggest trader in oil, alongside Russia and the United States, is Saudi Arabia, traditionally an American ally. They're very unhappy about this. They are now going to join the BRICS. That's their objective, or so they say. Now, let's say there is a reserve currency set up by the BRICS. Let's say the Saudis say, right, from now on, you pay for our oil, not in dollars anymore, but in this reserve currency. It's not going to be a good thing for the dollar. Oil is the most widely traded commodity. Every country has to buy it because oil is traded in dollars. Every country up to this point has had to have dollars. That's a major reason why the dollar is a reserve currency. If oil is going to be traded in a different currency created by the BRICS, well, then the dollar's position is going to be challenged as it has never been before.
And the interesting part about this new currency is, or it's going to probably be a basket of currencies, is that it's going to be based on commodities. It's going to be based on oil and gas and gold and things like this. It's not just going to be a purely fiat type of new currency system. So that's going to make things even worse for the US dollar and for the current system that we have. Saudi Arabia, by imposing this price cap, the entire West, they not only pissed off Russia, they pissed off OPEC, OPEC Plus, and Saudi Arabia. And this is such a huge, catastrophic mistake. And everyone, Jimmy, warned them. Even people that hate Putin, hate Russia, they warned the European Union, they warned the United States, don't do this. Don't do this. Poland came out of the meeting and said, why $60 price cap? Let's make it $30. That was their position. Let's make it $30. Why not?
So why are they doing it then? Like everything they're doing, like I saw from the beginning of this, that they are risking losing the United States dollar as being the world reserve currency. I've seen this. I saw it happening in BRICS. I saw Saudi Arabia starting to sell oil to China in their denomination and stuff like that. And I just don't get why. It's like they're trying to wreck America on purpose. It's like if you were trying to wreck America, this is how you would do it.
Absolutely. Well, of course, it all started with Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen wasn't happy because the Europeans back in the spring and summer were talking about an import ban on Russian shipborne oil. And she said this is going to raise oil prices. That may not be very good for the US. It might not be very good for the administration. It won't make people happy in the US if oil prices rise because there's an import ban on Russian oil. And she came up with this alternative idea. She said, well, let's do this price cap idea instead. That's going to cut Russian revenues, and at the same time, we will still be able to trade in Russian oil. People will still be able to buy Russian oil. And of course, what happened, and it's the way the European Union works, and one gets the sense that it's sort of hijacked this process. They said, right, we're going to ban imports of Russian oil. And then after a while, they said, well, let's have this oil price cap as well. So they actually took what was originally intended to be an alternative, and they seem to have added it to their original import ban idea. Now, I have to say, there's an article, an editorial actually, in the Financial Times today. This is this big economic newspaper that we have in London, a bit like the Wall Street Journal in the US. Anyway, they seem to be implying, or at least this is if you read between the lines, they seem to think that, maybe the oil import ban wasn't such a good idea after all. And maybe we're going for this oil price cap because at some point we're planning to lift the oil import ban. Even that editorial however, says this is a mess. And it's an absolute mess. It's something that really hasn't been thought through. One gets the sense that they're making it up as they go along, and everybody wants to posture and come up with solutions, which aren't really solutions at all.
Well, I mean, here is India is not going to. India says they're not worried about the EU price cap on Russian crude. The oil minister says, signaling that the South Asian economy intends to keep purchasing from Russia for now. Here, Ukraine has reacted negatively to the $60 price cap on Russian oil. Zelensky warns that this price cap will swell Russia's budget by $100 billion a year and was a show of weakness from the EU to Russia. How? I don't understand, because that means that's too high of a price cap? Is that what he means?
Yeah, absolutely. And I explain why. Because, of course, until, as I said, the price of Russian oil increased today, at least in the Far East Asian markets. And, let's not get too excited, because oil prices go up and down all the time. But anyway, until today, over the last couple of weeks, Russian oil has been trading in international markets at around $60 a barrel. So, this oil price cap essentially sets the price of Russian oil at the price it was trading at anyway. The Russians will still say we don't like this, and they won't like it because it's still a cap. It still says you can't trade above this, and they will never accept that. But Zelensky doesn't like it because he says what you're doing in order to punish Putin is simply paying him the very same price for his oil that he's selling it for anyway.
And you know what else is gonna happen? The reason India is fine with this, they're buying that Russian oil. They're actually buying record amounts of Russian oil. So they're going to buy that Russian oil. They've got huge refineries. They're going to sell it right back to Europe. They're going to make a ton of money. Wow. China's going to do the same. And you want to know what my hunch is? Don't be surprised if in a month or two we find out that the United States is doing the exact same thing.
So you're saying that the United States will get oil from Russia and refine it and sell it?
They'll find loopholes. They'll find a way. It's too good to pass up for businesses. You're telling me I can just buy this Russian oil at 60, 70, whatever, and then sell it to Europe for 90 or 100 or whatever, and they have to buy it? That's exactly what's going to happen.
I bet that is.
Everyone can go in the free market.
Hey, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, December 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th. And we're going to be in Tempe, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets. See you there.